Under the shadow of the Russian invasion and soaring inflation, President Biden delivered his first State of the Union address. The president called for unity on a number of issues, including the situation in Ukraine. Ed O'Keefe is standing by at the White House with more. Ed, good morning. The speech was interesting in that it did not really appear to have a partisan edge to it.
Oh, there was a little of that, but
bit.
Certainly not as much as there usually is in these State of the Union addresses. 62 minutes long, about 65 standing ovations by the count of the political unit of CBS News. And the president kind of veered away from the partisan rancor that's divided this city over much of the last several years, instead beginning with what's become a quick top-of-mind concern, the crisis in Ukraine and holding Vladimir Putin accountable.
He has no idea what's coming.
President Biden spent the first 10 minutes of his State of the Union address condemning Russian President Vladimir Putin's attack on Ukraine.
He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
Surrounded by lawmakers wearing the blue and yellow colors of Ukraine and waving that country's flag. The emotional high point of the night came when he introduced Ukraine's ambassador. The president announced plans to close U.S. airspace to Russian planes and said the Justice Department will be joining a global campaign to root out Russian oligarchs with ties to Putin.
We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for you, ill-begotten gains.
Mr. Biden appeared without a mask and got up close and personal with colleagues.
Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line.
According to a CBS News poll of speech watchers, 64% said the president's policies would lower inflation. One way to cut costs, he said, would be to revitalize American manufacturing.
That means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America.
He pushed a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and distanced himself from liberal Democrats on criminal justice reform.
The answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them.
He also called for passage of a unity agenda focused on 4 issues with broad bipartisan support: beating the opioid epidemic, tackling mental health, supporting veterans, and ending cancer. But his attempts at bipartisanship were punctured by 2 Republican lawmakers, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Lauren Boebert of Colorado. They shouted, "Build the wall," when he mentioned immigration, and Boebert interrupted again when he was speaking of his son's death, blaming the president for service members killed in Afghanistan during last year's chaotic withdrawal. That drew boos from across the chamber, and Democrats and Republicans criticized the Congresswoman. This morning, Senator John Thune, the number 2 Senate Republican on CBS Morning, said that their antics were, quote, inappropriate, for example. Not the kind of headlines the GOP wants, of course, as they're trying to remain unified going into the midterm elections. As for the president, he and the First Lady are headed to Wisconsin today to tout passage of last year's bipartisan infrastructure bill and to talk about some of that domestic agenda he laid out in the speech last night, guys.
So, Ed, new CBS News polling shows that most viewers felt optimistic and proud after watching the president's speech. We should point out that usually the people that watch the president's speech are people who are already supportive of the president, so it's not particularly shocking. But I'm wondering how other Democrats felt about what the president had to say. As we know, there is a more progressive faction of the Democratic Party. Did they like what they heard?
There was some criticism of a lack of conversation about or maybe more conversation about things like climate change, student loan forgiveness. There's probably going to be a bit of a debate in the coming days over what the president said about funding police operations in this country as opposed to defunding them. That seems to be a direct knock on the left side of his party, who made that such a big issue in the last election, potentially to the detriment of some Democrats in tight races. But, you know, I think perhaps a bigger signal of how this is going is how can the president sustain the message from last night into today when he goes to Wisconsin, which is a swing state, not only for its competitive gubernatorial and Senate races this year, but then in 2024 when it's likely to be again in the presidential contest. And you're going to see the president visiting those swingy states throughout this year going into 24, knowing that if they can do well in those states in this even-numbered year, potentially the president can, spark magic again in them in 24. But beyond that, they're hoping to see in the coming days that the numbers went up beyond the instant poll that we did of people that, as we point out, are mostly fans of the president or inclined to want to hear him talk.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much.
Take care.